and which is very important in making India a manufacturing hub. Unless and until we have enough testing capability and the infrastructure available in the country, we will not be able to make India a defense manufacturing hub. And obviously, the larger corporations have reach to all the testing facilities, but it's more important to give enough testing infrastructure to the MSMEs, so that the more and more MSMEs can be integrated in the defense supply chain. We know that there are already 12,000 MSMEs which are now integrated and working with the defense sector, with the armed forces and with the paramilitary forces. So there's enough scope which we have, and enough opportunity for MSMEs to be integrated in the defense supply chain. Uh, so this important webinar is actually done in collaboration with the Technology Development Board, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, and the Ministry of MSME, Government of India. You may be knowing, you may be aware that PhD chamber, I'll reiterate about PhD chamber because the new panelists joined. So PhD chamber is an apex national chamber with a history of about 117 years and a reach to about around more than 150,000 corporate houses in India and abroad also. We have around 16 state offices across the country, and we have MOUs, more than 50 MOUs with the international chambers and organizations. And as a partner of Progress, we have been working very closely with the industry, especially the MSMEs, at the grassroots level with strong national and international linkages for propelling the growth. And just to also update you that we have a very vibrant Defense and Homeland Security Committee, and we are working very closely with all the stakeholders, be DPSUs, OEMs, Indian private sector, MSMEs, armed forces, all of them, Department of Defense Production, to actually address the contemporary issues. And specifically for the last 1.5 years and 2 years, we are working very much for the promotion of indigenization in defense sector and the opportunities, underlying opportunities for the Indian defense industry, especially the MSMEs. We have organized more than 12 programs with the armed forces, DPSUs, OEMs, also paramilitary forces on the opportunities for Indian MSMEs. In the series, defense testing has been, we have identified that this is one of the key sectors which needs to be addressed, and we have been calling all the stakeholders for this discussion. Today with us, we have Commander Kuldeep Singh Nehra. He's the QA, obviously, for DTIS under DGQA. Thank you so much for joining, sir. We have our eminent moderator, Commander Jayakumar Rangunathan, who is a principal consultant and at an MSME for KPMG India. Thank you, Commander Jayakumar. We had just finished another webinar on the network-centric operations. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. We have Professor Gopal Kamath, the director and professor in charge and the faculty Department of Aerospace Engineering, IIT Kanpur. Thank you, Professor Saab, for making it possible to join to share your thoughts and views on the subject and the academic part of it. Thank you so much. We have Mr. Harsh Vardhan Gune, the GM projects at Tata Projects Limited. Thank you, Mr. Gune, for joining us. We have Mr. Akhilesh Sahi, the Director Sales from the Siemens Industry Software Private Limited. Thank you, Mr. Sahi. We spoke and about 2 days back, and he agreed to share his views on the subject. Thank you so much, Mr. Sahi. Now we also have Mr. Shiv Shankaraya, Mr. Kumaraswamy, the Director Testing Solutions and Engineering Consulting from Siemens Industry Software. Thank you, Mr. Kumaraswamy. We can't see you, but I think he's there. He's already there. I can see his window. Thank you. There are other people from IIT Kanpur also have joined to be a part of this discussion. Thank you all once again. And now I will hand over this forum, this discussion to Commander Jayakumar Raghunathan to take it forward and moderate the session. Over to Commander Jayakumar.
Thank you, Dr. Jamal. Thank you. Defense, this cluster-based facilities and combined defense testing infrastructure is a topic of utmost importance in the current scenario. KPMG was recently involved in a very detailed study to understand the landscape for the defense testing infrastructure. Defense industry is an area of strategic importance, and India is being one of the largest armed forces in the world, has been long been heavily dependent on imports for fulfilling its requirements. While this dependency has reduced considerably, there is still much to be done to achieve the national goal of Atmanirbhar Bharat. A major step in this direction was to turn focus towards building a robust domestic defense manufacturing industry that could cater to the needs of the armed forces. As part of this initiative, the government has given particular attention to the defense sector, and several steps have been taken to catalyze the development of indigenous capabilities in defense manufacturing and otherwise other manufacturing also, in terms of indigenization lists, simplification of procedures, increased FDI, establishment of industrial corridors and manufacturing clusters. There has been a lot of work on the policy in terms of the acquisition policy, the production and export promotion policy, the positive import list, streamlining of grant of industrial licenses, innovations of defense excellence, technology development fund, strengthening of MSMEs, allocation for domestic procurement, and much wider extended support to the private industry. And while this is all happened towards creating a trust in the production side, it is also needs to be complemented by creating enough facilities, particularly for testing, which can be shared by this. And to kickstart this process, the existing defense capabilities of the DRDO labs, DPSUs, etc., have also been made available to the private industry. So when you look at industrial clusters, they are a key attribute for any plan design to bring about a regional economic development, and not just by geography proximity, but also by magnitude of the cluster effects. These cluster effects are of great interest because they confer a positive benefit on an individual firm in the cluster, independent of the characteristics of the location. Industrial clusters represent an organizational structure in which which is very spatial in nature. The chain can be traced horizontally as well as vertically, and at the same time, there can be several interlinks that are possible. Clusters also generate competition, and these are mostly positive because there is a proven increase in productivity. There is an increase in innovation in each unit that desires to differentiate itself. There is also it also stimulates formation of new businesses as units expand and strengthen themselves within the cluster. Another key aspect of industrial clusters is that clustering affords the sharing of some key infrastructure and resources particularly required for testing, transportation, etc. With careful macro level planning, clusters make it possible to minimize overall infrastructure investment. This is particularly relevant for the aerospace and defense manufacturing clusters, which have certain unique requirements for testing and evaluation, which are very different from the commercial requirements. Therefore, the ongoing initiatives to energize the defense manufacturing ecosystem in this country would also need to be complemented by specific efforts to equip, synchronize, and streamline the defense testing ecosystem, considering the stringent defense standards and testing and quality assurance requirements that are necessary for equipment and material to comply with. Further, there is also need to make the manufacturing base, primarily the MSMEs, familiar with the testing and qualification ecosystem. That is, what are the standards required, what are the test systems applicable for equipment to be successfully tested and accepted, what are the different testing equipment and facilities that are required to prove the same. There is a need to create a certain level of awareness amongst the MSMEs at large. It is also important for manufacturers and potential entrants to be familiar with the details of existing facilities and how to avail these facilities. So in this regard, MOD and DGQA in particular has already taken several steps with the defense testing infrastructure scheme that is currently being implemented. And I'm sure Commander Nehra from DGQA will throw some light on the same in his keynote address. I would now request Commander Nehra to deliver the keynote address. Commander Nehra, over to you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yeah. You're audible. You're not visible. Yeah, we can see you now. We're looking forward to your address, Commander Nehra, because DTIS is something that is happening. A lot of people are looking forward to it. They are hoping that it will fulfill certain some of the bigger aspirations of the MSMEs, particularly. So over to you.
Sir, so thank you very much for giving the opportunity to speak on this occasion. To start off with, as Commander Jaikumar has brought out, this is one of the important schemes of Government of India. It is one of the 167 transformational ideas which the present government had brought in, wherein they were aware that there is a gap in terms of testing facilities available for especially MSMEs. And there are a lot of times when people have to go to abroad to get this the testing done. So for that reason, this particular scheme was envisaged. It, as everybody is aware, there is a budget allocation of 400 crores for this scheme. Now to start off with, I'll just go into how and when it was conceptualized. So this was considered in Dr. Ajay Kumar, who is presently Secretary Defense. When he was Secretary DP, he had brought in this scheme, and it was supposed to be a grant in aid scheme. Now the grant in aid scheme, and that also under civil budget. So basically, there is no budget which is coming from defense revenue or capital, and this kind of scheme had no precedence. Now this is one of the challenges which we are facing it, because even though there are schemes like METI's cluster scheme is there, so there are precedences, but in defense industry, this kind of scheme is the first of its kind, and we can very well say that there are a lot of bottlenecks, and as I am dealing it for last almost year plus, I am finding it that yes, there are bottlenecks because of particular QRs which are there in the scheme, which makes the industry slightly not so enthusiastic about opting for the scheme. Now, moving on. Now, say as other issues which are there, like the granting scheme has to have a particular objective. Now, that objective has to be in line with the larger objective of the government. That is, then the role of the NITI Aayog comes into the picture, wherein it has to see whether the scheme actually warrants to be there, or is it a repetition of some scheme or something like that. So there are a lot of initial observations from the NITI Aayog, but however, they are all explicitly resolved. And presently, we finally ended up getting the guidelines approved after almost a timeline of, we can say, almost a period of 2 years, 1.5 to 2 years, if I'm not wrong. And the guidelines were issued in 2020. Now, the issues with the guidelines, all are aware. I'll briefly touch upon, because these are the key issues. One is the one which relates to Section 8. Now, this is an issue which most of the industry is not very happy, and there are reasons for that. And the primary reason is that most of the industry, when they put in some amount of fund from their side, because this scheme has got a funding where 25% has to be given from the SPV side, that is a special purpose vehicle, which is supposed to have 5 members. So now, most of the time, what happens that if an industry is going to put in some amount of money, so they want to flow it back. So now it becomes very difficult, because the SPV once formed, that SPV cannot either change the shareholding pattern, or nor he can take out any kind of earnings from there. The thing which is going to come out from there, there is a profit, there has to be again invested into the same test facility. So now this may be a dampener for bigger industries. Our smaller industries, they have not come out with any kind of issues on these aspects. But yes, bigger industry, when I say, it also means, I mean to say public sector units also, because they also wanted to have facilities in terms of developing their brownfield facilities. Now, this is the stumbling block for them. But then, if you have a brownfield facility, it becomes very difficult for us to earmark how much fund has come for the brownfield and how much are utilizing actually from the scheme. So this also was rejected, and it was categorically told that there has to be a greenfield test facilities. So bigger test houses which are there, they definitely wanted to have this facility as a incremental brownfield test facility. Now, Section 8, there was a provision which says that Section 8, if we remove Section 8, then it becomes no more a grant in aid. Then it is like you're giving a loan to the industry to set up, and then accordingly they have to return within a given period of time. So this was debated at length, and this provision is going to stay there, and this is one of the core provision of the scheme. And there are reasons for that, because the government of India says that this scheme is primarily to help the MSMEs, and it is to help them, and there has to be some kind of hand holding. That is why when we see the SPVs, most of the SPVs are having 1 or 2 bigger players, but there are MSMEs which are going to join with them. So it will be very difficult for smaller industries to actually, what do you say, like they will not be having that much of financial turnover to actually come and pay it back. So in granting it as it is, the mandate is that the government of India sends the grant, the SPV utilizes the grant, and then the implementation agencies or the monitoring agencies, evaluation agencies, they check whether the grant has physically been seen, and accordingly the funding is done. So and then there are basically no questions asked in terms of like questions in the sense like when you give loan, you have to give loan on a period of some 5 years, 10 years, whatever the setting is there. In this, you are giving a grant and you tell the industry, please set up the test facility which should have following tests, and you give us the milestone in which you will be setting it up, and we will give the disbursement of the payment in that given milestone. And we have got a consultant who is going to verify it, plus DDP itself will go and verify it physically whether the facility has been set up or it is just that they're not very it is not. So there comes the issue. Now this section 8 is going to stay, and so is going to be the greenfield test facilities. Now coming to the other stumbling block which was there was formation of SPV. So to start with, initially when this scheme was started, the SPVs were 7 in numbers. So after a lot of debate, it becomes very difficult for, I know it is very difficult for the industry to get 7 people together on a given platform to have a common facility made. So that is why after a lot of debate, it was reduced to 5. Now further going below 5 becomes very difficult because there is a cap in the shareholding pattern which says that the biggest shareholder should not have more than 40% of shareholding in the given SPV. So now if you have lesser than 5, I think it becomes very difficult because I don't know what permutation combination they will have to not breach this 40%. So this is also one of the feedback which came from industry. So we've reduced from 7 to 5, and right now it is going to stay up to 5. Now coming to the next part, what all test facilities have we selected for this? Now for this, to start off with, the cap was that 400 crore is the budget, and 6 to 8 greenfield test facilities are to be set up, and they are to be categorized into small, medium, and large. So small facilities means any facility which is lesser than 20 crores, medium means 20 to 50 crores, large means greater than 50 crores. So now small 3, medium 3, and large 2. Now, in order to have a very gainful utilization of the budget of 400 crores, we had already divided into this 3-2, that is small, medium, large. Because when you say above 50 crores, it becomes very difficult to actually keep a cap till where it will go. So now, how do you come to the conclusion that which all test facilities are to be selected for setting up? So for this reason, we had in the guidelines, we had one of the paras which said that we can hire a consultant. So we hired a consultant who did this gap analysis studies, wherein he went all around India's test facilities, either physically or by taking the feedback from them. And finally, we arrived that there are 8 domains which actually require to be set up to have this gap in the testing fulfilled for the country. So now this 8 domains I will just briefly touch upon. These 8 domains are unmanned aerial system, which is a huge potential market right now, because whenever we talk about UAVs or UAS, I have this feeling that the industry is very, very enthusiastic about this because this is the future field. And so was the case whenever we are issued a RFP, anything, there is a huge demand for this, and there are a lot of people who want to bid for this UAV. So definitely this was one of the test facilities which is going to be set up. Second is EMI EMC. EMI also, even though there are various labs, but then private industries, they told that there is a lot of lag in between getting actual tests done from the existing labs. So this was one of the test facilities. Second was environmental, then mechanical. Again, mechanical is a huge field. This also has got a huge bidders who want to actually bid for this mechanical. Communication, electronic warfare, electro-optics, and ammunition. Now the last two, electro-optics and ammunition, even though there is a gap in the country with respect to test facilities, however, there are not much takers for these test facilities also. So it at times becomes very difficult for us because it results in we don't having a quality bidder coming, and then whoever is coming it becomes very difficult for us to actually make out whether he'll be able to set up or not. So these two test facilities, my earnest request is that if any industry is there who can pitch in for electro-optics, ammunition, and I think EMC, it will definitely help the help this scheme to achieve the goal, because the remaining 5 we have got a lot of takers and they definitely will come up in no time. Now moving on, I already spoken about bottlenecks. I forgot to tell one of the bottlenecks is land availability. Now land availability is also one of the bottlenecks which the industry always portrays to us. And the issue with respect to land is that when we are issuing the RFP, as per the guidelines, it says that the land has to be available while you are bidding, either on lease or in actuals. So the industry says that if I am not having presently the given contract, so I am taking on lease, I'm not very sure that I'll get this bid or not. So that much amount of money holding gets wasted. So we had worked around, we told that, okay, fine. Right now, whenever this thing comes up, we always say that, okay, fine, you give us the lease agreement and final documentation all that will be done during the signing of the contract. So this is also one of the issues which are there. Now, I'll tell you what all progress have we made. We had issued all the 8 RFPs. Now, the first 4 which are there, we had very limited response. In fact, we had 1 or 2, or in some cases even single response. So this was projected to the secretary, telling that the response is not good enough and we are not getting the numbers which we are expecting. So there is a likelihood that there are a lot of amendments, not a lot of, few of the amendments which will come up and which will make the scheme look more attractive. And maybe the scheme guidelines said that initially we should set up the test facilities in the defense industrial corridors. So that point also we are looking into. Like presently the RFP says that preference will be given, but however we are not quantified that what kind of preference are we going to give. So now the thinking is there that at least we should, as a test case, we should at least have one of initial test facilities in 2 corridors which are primarily set up for this aerospace and defense industries. So most likely the amendments may happen wherein we may end up giving the initial test facilities to the DICs, so that the mindset which was there of Government of India of having these corridors built up as the key corridors of defense industry. So that will be one of the things which we are looking forward to. And other guidelines amendments also, not guidelines, RFP amendment wherein the MSMEs told that they don't have that kind of work experience. Like we had actually come out with a GFR, the GFR curve which says that 40% of the given project cost. So that is all good for the projects where you have got enough money. But in testing, actually speaking, in India, the testing is not up to that, that value of money is not there. So that also we'll be working it out so that the small scale industry can bid for it. And we have now, in fact, added a line where it says that cumulative 15% of the project cost. So like that, there is a hope where we see that MSMEs will find this scheme attractive. Right now, we are getting a good amount of people who are from PSUs who are coming to us, state industries is coming to us. And in fact, there are existing SPVs which have come to us from Maharashtra, and we had got from Tamil Nadu, the state, and UP also. So like that, we had got enough number of people who had come up, but somehow the stumbling block in terms of experience, the work project experience is slightly not there. So there is a thinking which is going on, and it is not going on now. It is going for almost last 2 months, because we have to now make it so straight jacketed that now the moment we give, it should come out in a very, very great way of what it was envisaged. That is, like what we envisaged was, we will set up 8 test facilities. We should have corridors building up. Corridors should be the hub, and around the hub there should be a what do you call that hub and the spoke and the cycle phenomena. So around the hub, everything should be there. So this is how we are working on it, and most likely we are looking forward that maybe in a week or so we will come out with the fresh RFPs for some of the projects, or we may have some amendment for some of the projects, or we may have guidelines amendment, or whichever way can get the industry to come to us. So this is the present status of the DTIs as on date, and I already covered in the following topics the background, and I also told what was the thinking. Then I also told what are the challenges. I also told where all we have faced the challenges after issuing RFP and how we are overcoming it to make it more attractive. So with this, I think I have more or less covered the scheme. If I have left something, I would be very much happy to answer the questions of the audience who are there.
Thank you, Commander Nara, for for that for elaborating so much on what the government is doing in terms of setting up the TTIS scheme and the various challenges that you have that have been faced and how you have overcome many of that at different stages. How you're trying to get the industry involved in a large way to make this a successful program, so that the industry is ultimately going to be the beneficiary of this. Thank you so much for that insightful address. I think Mr. Agarwal is going to be a little bit delayed. So, Professor Kamath, sir, if I can request you to kindly deliver your address while we wait for Mr. Agarwal to join us at some point.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commander Nara. Professor Kamath, over to you, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Commander Jaikumar. First of all, thank you, PSD Chamber of Commerce, for this opportunity. My name is Gopal Kamath. I'm a faculty in the Department of Aerospace Engineering. I also have the additional role of being professor in charge of the research park at IIT Kanpur. And with me, I have Ms. Reema Mittal, who is the CEO of the Technopark, which is a research park, and Ms. Archana Trivedi, who's a senior associate in the Technopark. So I had a presentation, but I think I'll just verbalize, or if you want, I can. Is it okay if I?
Yeah, you can share
very
the
much, sir.
presentation.
It would be very, very insightful if you can make the presentation.
Yeah, please do that.
Yeah.
Sir.
Okay. Just a quick introduction to Technopark itself. So it's actually Technopark is, I think the audience would be familiar with the concept of research parks. So Technopark at IIT is the brand name of the research park at IIT Kanpur. The actual name is the IIT Kanpur Research and Technology Park Foundation. It's a not-for-profit Section 8 company, and the idea of the company is to deepen and facilitate industry academia collaborations and bring all the stakeholders together. So our vision, like I said, is to bring industry and academia together and help in terms of technology development, R&D, whatever needs that the industry has, because now it has become important not only for academia to reach out to industry. It's become almost imperative. It has become almost obvious that for whatever Atmanirbharta vision that this government has, it's going to be very important for academia also to be participating in this vision. So, and I think so. It has been, I think, part of that vision is why we have this research park. So the idea is that this research parks become hub of R&D activities spanning all industrial sector. That's our vision. We also want to enable translational research and two-way knowledge. So we also see that there are many ideas, there are many patents within the academia which can find its way to, say, a product or to some kind of a technology that the industry can leverage. Like I said, we are also trying to deepen the cooperation between industries and IIT Kanpur. And one of the key things, and which is relevant to today's webinar, is that we look at Technopark as some kind of a vibrant hub of technology development activities, testing activities, certification activities, and so on. So I think we look at the facilities also not just in terms of having R&D centers or R&D offices of industries. We also look at it as the facilities that we have been discussing this morning, also in terms of testing and certification. And we believe as part of this, we will contribute, Technopark will contribute to the overall economic development of the country, and especially in the critical sectors such as defense and aerospace. Okay, so having given that introduction, so what I believe is the advantage, like in terms of creating these common facilities, I think the research park, and I'm going to speak for IIT Kanpur Research Park, but I think this can be looked at as as a suggestion to engage with. There are research parks in other IITs, other academic institutions as well. And I think there has also been a recent push by, I think it was there in the last budget, that in the defense budget, especially, that at least a certain portion of the budget will be allocated for academic activities. And I think this is a great opportunity for industries. It's also a great opportunity for academia to work together with the industry. And this 25% R&D budget can be leveraged for these kind of testing and certification activity development and establishment. So certainly one key aspect, key advantage of working with Technopark is that we are an extension of IIT Kanpur. We are part of the R&D ecosystem at IIT Kanpur. IIT Technopark, the Section 8 company, is promoted by IIT Kanpur, and the board of directors are all ex officio members of IIT Kanpur, the director, the deputy director, dean, and so on. So Technopark, essentially, by engaging with Technopark, you essentially leverage the larger R&D ecosystem of IIT Kanpur, which, by the way, also includes the incubation system, meaning Technopark is not an incubator, but we also have a separate incubator. So that is also a great opportunity to work with Technopark. So we have, first of all, we have already existing test facilities. As you know, I mean, IIT Kanpur, being one of the premier academic institutions, has a fairly large spectrum of test facilities, which as a base was what I'm talking about. The faculty expertise, I think, so if you think of, say, this test facility being as part of IIT Kanpur, you can also think of it as not just a simple test facility, but where there is an equipment, there is an operator, or there is a technician who does the test, makes the generates the data and hands it over to the customer. Here you also have the opportunity to work with the faculty, where there could be a lot of value addition to the testing that is being done. Okay, so I think this is actually win-win situation. It's not just advantageous for the industry, it's also advantageous for the faculty, because they get to work very closely with the industry, understand what the pain points of industry are, what are the needs of industry. So actually it works both ways. And of course, the students, it's an amazing opportunity for students to be part of this activity. And I think, again, it's a win-win. Industry gets to work with some of the brightest students in this country, and the students get to work with some of the really cutting-edge technologies and cutting-edge ideas that are coming up. So how do we do this? And I think we are already working on some of these ideas. So Technopark is already engaged on discussions to be part of the DTIS scheme, which Commander Nera just explained. We are also looking at some of the verticals where we can participate. We are also looking at some of the government MHI initiative, such as the Samarth Udyog 4.0, where we are looking at possibly setting up some common engineering facility centers for specific industries. And I think apart from these, I think I would like to reach out and call out to all the industries that are here as audience and part of the PhD members of the PhD Chamber of Commerce, wherein we can even look at setting up very specific, like, say, for example, avionics equipment testing for defense. So it's not just, it's catered to, like, as Commander Nera said, based on the gaps that the industry sees. So we have been reaching out to, say, defense industries. We have been reaching out to biomedical medical equipment industries, because wherever there is a need for testing, certification, uh, and so on. So there it becomes very important to have a common uh, set or common facility. Uh, and I think rather than having a very broad, a very generic kind of testing facility, it helps in terms of sometimes the business, but sometimes I feel like very niche facility for very specific industry would also help, because then that becomes like a one-stop shop for those kind of facility. Like I believe avionic equipment testing, which requires a fairly wide range. Like, you might need vibration testing, you might need say environmental testing, you might need EMI EMC testing, but for a given, because the standards are very well laid out, so you can have under one roof, so you bring in an equipment, there are these different tests that needs to be done. It's all done within, I don't know, some time frame, and it becomes very easy for the industries to come. There is you can even give some sort of a service level agreement which says that, if you bring in this agreement, I mean, if you bring in this equipment, within a certain time, all the tests will be carried out. And so that is one opportunity that we have. And I think specifically Technopark we have signed an MOU with the UP Defense Industrial Corridor. Basically, we signed the MOU with UPDA, which manages and which runs the UP Defense Corridor. And again, this is a great opportunity, I think, for Technopark as well, to engage with the defense industry and see how we can contribute. I think there was one slide on, I think, so you can see that there's already, this is in the DTS terminology, we are sort of a greenfield facility, because the Technopark itself, we are building a very new facility which is close to 250,000 square feet, where we hope that we will have centers like this. We will have industries which are setting up their R&D. We'll have industries setting up their uh, industries coming to Technopark for this kind of a testing needs. So I think with that, I will just open up, and I think just to respond, since this is more of also my thoughts on some of the challenges that Commander Nera mentioned. I think since we were also part of the discussions for DTS, we also understand some of the challenges that the DJQA has, and we have also understood the challenges of the industry. And I think it will be good. I think since the profit is one of the challenges, I think I would still suggest that you engage with Section 8 companies, because I still think this I think is better managed. I believe. I think Commander Nehra would be a better person to correct me if I'm wrong. Is to have a grant and aid, maybe increase the portion from the government, of course, with suitable checks and balances, and have engage with Section 8 companies which are already here, rather than form a new SPV. I think research parks in academic institutions could be like Technopark, for example, and have identified, or in collaboration with the defense corridor, because again, it's a government agency. So again, the issue of conflict of interest or profit motive is not there, and the idea is just to help industries and MSMEs do their testing needs. I think these are some of my thoughts, and with that, I once again thank ESD Chamber of Commerce and thank all the audience for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Kamath, for that very enlightening address, wherein you brought out what the technoparks are doing and what are the possibilities, and some of the suggestions that you gave are pretty relevant. KPMG was recently involved in a very detailed study of the defense testing infrastructure in the country to try and map what kind of facilities exist and what are the typical gaps. And one of the things that we definitely identified as part of the study was the fact that there is a lot of technical and academic knowledge flow that is required to the ecosystem per se, not just in terms of identifying the testing technologies that are necessary, but also mapping them with the standards that are available. Of course, the government is also working on standardizing the standards and not proliferation of standards. So this kind of a synchronous effort with the academia in place is very important. It's something that we have also identified in our study. Hopefully, going forward with so many stakeholders contributing, KPMG is also involved in both the defense corridors, and we are constantly in touch with the MSMEs who are giving us a lot of feedback. And hopefully, forums like this, Dr. Jamal will agree with me, will possibly help in churning the knowledge and generating newer ideas and trying to solve this problem holistically rather than in bits and pieces. Thank you once again, Professor Kamath. If that, I'm not sure Mr. C.P. Agrawal has joined yet, so I would request Sri Harsavardhan, GM Projects, Tata Projects, to make the next address, please. Mr. Harshavardhan, over to you.
Good afternoon. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are very much audible, Mr. Gune.
Good afternoon, everybody. And it's a great opportunity to connect on this very important subject. And I sincerely thank KPMG and PhD Chamber of Commerce for formulating, this webinar on a very crucial topic. I would just like to touch upon 3 or 4 important aspects of setting up a CFC and cluster approach under testing facilities. I would like to share with the audience that I was leading one of the public-private partnership model in SPV in Maharashtra, which was set up under DIPP then, basically a scheme known as Industrial Infrastructure Upgradation Scheme, wherein a similar SPV with 75% funding from the government and 25% from the private industry was to be set up. So under this scheme, there are about 9 engineering or technical clusters exist in India, and there are about 40 such clusters exist apart from the engineering and technical side. So as on today, when we say cluster, the system usually refers to the IIUS scheme of DIPP. Previously, it was Section 25. Now it is Section 8. And way back in 2015 or 2000 mid 15, when the indigenization, the Make in India, and the whole thrust of inviting private industry into defense production started, I had, in fact, a very strategic meeting with then late Sri Parikar, and volunteered as leader of the public-private partnership model that since we are part of the government, we should be given an opportunity to contribute in Make in India. So he understood the vision, and we had a joint meeting in South Block along with the CEO of HAL, Daljit Singh then, and of Nasik, since this SPV was in Nasik. And that was the initiation of utilizing the existing capabilities set up under IIUS scheme and how we could utilize for Make in India and expediting the indigenization process. I think since then, a lot of changes have happened in the defense procurement structures, and I think the biggest change is the import band list and the list of parts which are to be indigenized, and parts and assemblies which private industry is encouraged to come forward and make for India other than DPSUs. And of course, the DRDO lab. So industries are encouraged to develop on their own through IDDM, or startups are encouraged, and private industry is also encouraged to make assemblies which possibly only DPSUs were authorized or structured to make. So this, in fact, calls for a comprehensive aid to industries in terms of testing. So in my last 3 to 4 years of direct experience of developing products for defense, I think one of the bottlenecks we faced was the time, duration, and the facilities required to validate the product, especially some ammunition parts and bomb shells and military warfare. So I believe some kind of testing facility, common facility centers or clusters are definitely needed. So in terms of supporting the industry for making the indigenization a success. The other important issue is can the existing SPVs be used, or can the facilities in the existing SPVs be used for the testing facilities? And I feel it's a very delicate and complicated situation, because the experience with current SPVs is nowhere near sufficient to cater to the testing requirements of the defense products. In most of the SPVs have very limited testing facilities, limited in the sense metrological and metallurgical testing. I mean, you have, let's say, coordinate measuring machine, or some measuring instruments and metallurgical test laboratories, and they claim that this can be used as a testing facilities. So we'll have to be really specific, having come now from industry side. And one is 2-3 types of testing, and which we were proposing in defense corridor as part of our proposal for setting up the CFC is you have performance test wherein you need requirements on hand holding with the defense forces. And the second is the metrological testing and metallurgical test parameters, which existing any laboratories can be used. And as far as the performance tests are concerned, special testings are to be manufactured. You need help from the armed forces in terms of developing those test parameters. And of course, third part is the funding and whether a section and company and profit and other issues. So these are prominently some of the challenges, very specific challenges of setting up the testing facility. Now, as part of, I'm also on the defense committee here in Maharashtra, the prominent association, Maratha Chamber of Commerce, Industries and Agriculture. So one of the solution or answer to forming of the CFC, in fact, is associations like this can come forward and contribute in some form or the other as part of the representatives of the private industries. So that justifies the number 5 or the fund, or running the SPV in a very neutral manner, focused on certain deliverables, which is basically a question mark in the current SPVs also. So this particular chamber, Maratha Chamber of Commerce, in fact, has the unique distinction of coming forward and setting up 2 such SPVs. First was under DIPP, wherein the first ever cluster in India was set up in Pune for the automotive area. And the second is they have gone forward and now setting up center for the electronic cluster. So one of the way is associations can come forward in place of individual entities. So that takes care of the deliverable, for which the all government machinery is always worried of. And I have been on this side of running, in fact, a PPP model. And I have been regularly interacting with various sources and trying to establish through the deliverables. That is, I think, a big issue. Second is, I can share with the audience what we are doing here. We are now working very closely with regional technology node under ADB, and the first of its kind was established in Pune, primarily because of the established infrastructure and the given track record of technocrats running the industry here. So the primary aim was of the regional technology node was to support the ongoing development, research, innovation, and startups, and encourage indigenization through direct handholding. So we have been, in fact, working on a very specific issues of armored vehicles, ammunitions, and taking industry to areas like Devlali and Ahmednagar, and forming some kind of an cluster also with private company. I can share with you, we have an initiative from Godrej Aerospace that they are now forming a cluster with a specific projects or products in mind, so that accordingly a testing facility can be set up for particular programs. So be it some kind of missile, some kind of armored vehicles, or some kind of definitive programs where we have a list of requirements of what that region can manufacture. So through capability mapping, we are trying to identify what that region can manufacture, and accordingly input can be given in terms of setting up the test facilities. I believe this kind of approach would essentially help in formulating the requirements, or facilities or equipments those can be set up in testing facilities. Otherwise, it could be like current SPVs where 3 or 4 SPVs have come together and they have all similar DPRs and very similar facilities in all clusters, like especially in current SPVs. They have 3D printing everywhere. So in a 200-kilometer range, you have 3D printing everywhere. You have metallurgical laboratory everywhere. We have the metrology laboratory everywhere. So the CFC or the testing facility has to be unique to the purpose of the products or programs or platforms being selected to manufacture or indigenize. The last but not the least, there are hundreds of parts and components those require to be indigenized, and we continuously take the industry to the areas where all the assemblies and parts are displayed. And that's where the importance of testing facility comes in, because the private industry can definitely re-engineer and make a prototype of the part, but the parts have to be tested somewhere. So there has to be a 3-party or a 3-entity collaboration, which means our forces are also required to ascertain the test. Industry, of course, through making of the components, and wherever the capabilities exist in the testing facilities, those test facilities, a lot of fixtures have to be made, a lot of testing parameters have to be developed in very close collaboration with armed forces and laboratories. So I feel going forward, associations can come forward. It has to be a collaborative effort of forming up a DPR, or what kind of products or what kind of platforms are to be indigenized or made in that particular either defense corridor or otherwise. And if there is an anchor unit who is making the assemblies, who is making the consortium, I think that can help and formulate a very detailed and proper testing methodologies in the testing center. So these are the inputs from my side, and I am open to questions during the call or after the call. So over to Commander Jay Kumar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gune. Thank you so much for your for throwing some light on, from the industry perspective, particularly in terms of the activities that are being taken up by Tata Projects at present, and your involvement at large. To just add to your points, one of the things that like which I also was highlighting when I was discussing with Professor Kamath, is the fact that there is a requirement of standardizing the standards. There are a lot of standards which are existing, and one of the pain points that MSMEs typically face is the fact that identifying test facility is one part, but what are the standards that is applicable? What is the procedure that is to be followed for technically defining the procedure correctly in terms of what is to be tested? So that I'm sure DDIS is already looking at it, and we also happen to interact with the MOD, and MOD was also very very aware of the fact that there are different standards which are existing. They need to be consolidated, and I will, being an ex-naval officer, I'll take pride in the fact that Navy has done a lot to standardize the standards, but overall for defense testing, a lot more needs to be done, and I'm sure that will get addressed in the course of time. With that, I would like to move on to the next speaker. Mr. Akhilesh Sahi, Director Sales, Siemens Industry Software. If I can request you to kindly deliver your address.
Thanks, Commander Jayakumar. It was pleasure to hear such a forum, and I really thanks PhD Chambers and KPMG for inviting us. I really thank Professor Kamath to give so much insight about this project and how IIT Kanpur is really helping the industry. If you don't mind, I'll have a small presentation and I'll use the presentation for, putting up, sharing my
Please
thoughts.
kindly go ahead. It will be more helpful if you can use it.
Yes, thank you. Confirm me if you are able to see my screen.
Yeah, it is visible now.
We can see that.
Yeah.
Perfectly, all right. Thanks everyone again. I have my colleague Kumar also present in this discussion. I had the academic business for Siemens in India. And as mentioned by Professor Kamath, academic and industry these days are going hand in hand, and we as Siemens also are trying to project worldwide that if academic is collaborating with the industry, the research and development activity, the kind of these COEs or CFCs will definitely help industries per se, MSMEs in particular. We have anyway are seeing good traction all across. Our thought of these CFCs are multi ways, that this should be a digital experience center, should attract these MSMEs, small industries or big industries to collaborate to see what is the common ground, should act as a research and development activity. Needless to say, the testing facility is part of the discussion what we are doing. Then we could share the industry know-how, as well as it could also help in research, training and skilling purpose as well. The major important part is the industry academic collaboration, which we want to highlight, because many of the things which industry cannot do could be or should be covered with the help of these industries. There are very prominent industries across India which we could utilize, and their setup could be used for this sort of perspective. And last not the least, many tie-ups could be possible, what currently IIT Kanpur is in line doing. We are proud to say we are already successful in setting up of many COEs from the industry perspective, namely NIT Trichy, Warangal, Kanpur, NIT Trichy, Nagpur, Warangal, Kurukshetra, Pech, Chandigarh, IITs Jodhpur, Goa, Guwahati, and few more IITs are in line. And recently, being KPMG as a consultant, we have signed up with TIDCO as a Section 8 company. TANSAM is the name of that Section 8 company. We are setting up a CFC for the defense corridor in Tamil Nadu, Chennai. Worldwide also, for helping industry, we have many centers across China, US, Germany, and Austria. How Siemens is helping? Siemens is trying to set up these CFCs, having a main thought process and main labs from the 7 main perspective. My colleague Kumar will also cover testing facility in detail. We have options for going in the academic, also in the commercial way. So he will give more insight about this. What we are trying to give the entire domain of Industry 4.0, from advanced manufacturing to design, from predictive engineering or testing facility to Industry 4 IoT, then life cycle management, as well as additive manufacturing. I'll just give you a small glimpse what all we are trying to do in our Center of Excellence, from specific advanced manufacturing, any kind of tool designing, 5-axis programming, SMT programming, PLC programming, robotic programming, CMM programming. The kind of tools or the software what Siemens will be giving is exponential, or it is from the stable of Siemens. Everything will be available for these institutes. That's the best part, because I don't know on what project they will be developing, maybe from the drone side, maybe from the marine side, maybe submarine side, or maybe from the tank side, or ammunition side. So everything from the Siemens stable will be available for the CFCs to use, or the industry to use. Then a few important aspect Commander also has mentioned regarding reverse engineering and industrial design, mechatronics, computer design, electrical CAD and detailing design is also will be part of these CFCs. Then moving on, the test facilities, what my colleague will also cover from that. We have two kind of testing which we wanted to just try to put up from the predictive engineering side, any kind of system simulation, mechanical and fluid, as well as there are noise, vibration, harshness. There will be some high sensitive devices which will be giving in our test lab. Kumar will be covering shortly, and that would be more interesting part for all of you. Moving on, Industry 4.0 or industrial IoT. Siemens has its own IoT platform called MindSphere, which we are giving to the CFCs for them to understand, to work towards the new age of manufacturing. Along with that, uh, Mendix has a platform which is a low-code app development platform which could help to reduce the lengthy app creation, and it could be done in a very small way, or could be done by mechanical engineers like us as well. Then the most of the part which generally the industry miss out, we are trying to tell these MSMEs or SMEs to learn and adopt in their organization, from PLM, from application lifecycle management, product cost management, service and quality, and all kind of reporting and analytic purpose, which will also be part of Siemens tool, which will be given to them. Then all kind of additive manufacturing, whether it is a generative, whether it is a built, whether it is a hybrid, or it's a robotic process, will be part of this. We will give the tools as well as a 3D printer, whether it is a metal, or will be part of these CFCs. And The best part of our tools from Siemens side is it is the AR or VR content could be developed from our tools. So this is a future way to help the industry, and in this sector, help the training part also could be covered very easily from these things. Also, the sensors data could be collected and could be put up into the software for various analysis purposes. Over and all, these 8 labs, what I am trying to put up, could help any MSME industry from the defense sector to just develop or to help the Indian defense industry for covering up most of their work. I'll request my colleague Kumar to take up the testing part, which is also the important aspect of our CFC or COE labs across. Kumar, please take it up.
Thank you, Akhilesh. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Kumar, you're audible.
Okay, great. Thank you. Also, let me know if you can see the screen, the presentation that I'm showing now. Is the presentation slides visible?
Not yet. You'll have to share. Yeah, now it is. No, not yet still. I mean, I'm seeing, yeah, now it's visible. Now it is visible.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for giving us this opportunity to just share what Siemens has been doing in the area that's being discussed currently. And my colleague Akhilesh did mention about the Center of Excellence, the kind of program that Siemens runs. The idea is to try bringing all possible solutions that's needed to really deliver a complete digital enterprise experience to both academic institutes as well as the industry. I'll just spend a few minutes on what exactly we've been doing on the testing solution per se. So as we know, the trends that we see in the market today in all industries, including the aerospace and defense, is to go more and more towards digital transformation. The idea is to do testing, of course, but try to do it upfront in the product development cycle, such that the number of trials that you end up doing during the production will reduce. And that way, the idea is to envisage a lot of issues that might come up in the early design stage itself. And that's where the digital transformation or digitalization is something that everybody is looking at as an important trend, and aligning all other activities around. So likewise, Siemens today offers a solution that covers the entire digital enterprise platform that allows customers to build the digital twins, right? Digital twins at a product design level, the digital twin of the product itself, then the production digital twin, both from the planning perspective as well as from the production perspective. And when the product is being used, right, there the idea is to acquire a lot of data during its operations to understand how is it being used, and that feedback can be given for a continuous improvement of this product or the whole process. So the product digital twin is something that we belong to, the Sim Center portfolio that we belong. So when we talk about digital twin, the digital transformation, I think most importantly, the idea is to do more and more simulations, but not just a simulation, but combine that with a test, right? But there, the idea is not just to do simulation alone, right? For going towards digital transformations or digital twins, because these digital twins, the moment we do more and more simulations, if it can be calibrated with the test data, and also if the realistic inputs for these simulation can come from testing, I think that makes the digital twins more robust. And that has been the philosophy of Siemens, to offer both test and simulation to close the loop and create more robust digital twins. So the simulation tool is not sufficient, but what is needed is a multidiscipline simulation tools supported strongly with our test. Here is an example of how we do test with simulations, and again front load most of the testing of systems early in the development cycle. And I have a slide to explain that in a detail in a few minutes. And what Siemens also offer is the industry and know-how and the best practices with our engineering consulting team, who have been working on multiple programs globally, and they bring the expertise needed to adopt these tools at a much faster rate, right? So these are tools that might need some training, some skills, but while working with our customers on their program or a project, our engineering consulting team makes sure that the technology is transferred, that we're being used for a faster adoption of this. And that's exactly what makes it, I would say, the digital twin or digital transformation in practice, executable one. So SimCenter itself has multiple areas, and it primarily covers all three important elements of engineering testing and analysis, starting with system simulation, pre-CAD tool to do concept level evaluations, to numerical simulation tools, the CAE, both in mechanical, electrical, electronics, fluids, and thermal, all physics, and then of course strongly supported by our physical testing. So the solution itself again has a lot of applications. I'll skip to the one that is important for the defense, aerospace and defense segment in a while. But what it primarily includes is a data acquisition system, which will be used on the product in an infrastructure or in a facility. So when it comes to the hardware, the data solutions that we offer to our industry, again across industry, automotive, ground vehicles, transportation, aerospace, defense, and so on, is what you see here. Some of the applications that is covered with our hardware and software is durability evaluations, then doing an environmental testing to check if the product sustains a shock, higher shock or vibration or a thermal load, for instance. Acoustics from comfort perspective, both on the noise side as well as on the vibrations side. Then very important certification specific works like ground vibration testing or in-flight flutter testing, jet engine testing, and so on and so forth. And wherever the need, for instance, for a land defense vehicles, for instance, if there is a need to go autonomous, right, autonomous vehicle, then there is also solutions that are available for us to acquire the data and use that for not just for certification, not just for complying with some standards, but also as an engineering insight that becomes an input for CAE simulations. So the idea of doing standalone testing is critical, is important, and that's what is needed to validate at the final level. But what Siemens promotes is what we call a model-based development. Meaning the what's happening is there are a lot of electrical and electronics and software that is getting into our product, every product for that matter. And what is becoming is also the complexity is increasing because a small component itself will be a system. So it's a system of systems, and that's where if we can model them accurately, these systems, and then do the developments and do this testing at a system level or a component level, and that build on top of that, you build a full system. That will help you to as I said, identify some of the potential issues much before, much earlier in the product development cycle, at where the cost of change is less, and also the ease of change is higher. So, and MBST testing itself also plays a very important role, because as I said, the MBD most often uses a lot of simulations, but doing it with testing ensures the successful or executable model based development. So how we collaborate with simulation is test for simulations. As I said many a times, when you do simulations, it's important that the models are calibrated or validated with experimental models, and that's where we use testing. Also, if I can acquire some of the loads, for instance, for environmental testing, we do, of course, refer some standards to do these shock vibration testing, but we are not sure if we are underdoing or overdoing these tests. So if I can do some real measurements and understand the loads that the product will undergo during its operation, and use that to create a test profile, I think that will be more optimized tests. That's where we also use test for simulation. And sometimes we also use simulation to prepare our test models. It could be from pre-test, virtual testing, and so on and so forth, to minimize the risks that are involved in doing a testing on a very expensive setup, right? That's where we use simulation to prepare our test with more confidence and test with simulation. And that's exactly what we call model-based system testing. In essence, it's simply a hardware in the loop test, but here the hardware is not some control unit, but the hardware is primarily a component that you want to test when it is integrated with full system. And that basically helps a lot in achieving this model-based development. So conventional product driven development or prototype driven development is to do a lot of simulation upfront. Then you start building systems components, and you do those tests on these component test rigs, right? Conventional test benches. And then you go for a final field testing, proto testing, to validate and also to comply with some certification part of it. But what we recommend to do is to go towards a model-based development, wherein, of course, you do simulations, but these simulations coupled with tests will be done at multiple development cycles. Here is an example. For instance, you have a landing gear that you want to test. For instance, how does it behave at a full system level or a full aircraft level under multiple scenarios, and that can easily be tested by just having this component as a physical one, and you couple that with a real-time model of the complete aircraft, the environment, the loads, and so on and so forth. So what we are essentially doing is to understand the component that we already have and how does it behave at a system that is still in a concept stage. And that will help us to upfront understand what could be the potential issues and try to solve it. And then, of course, we will still do the field testing for certification and also for troubleshooting. And that's the same hardware that I showed for classical testing, certification, standard compliance, as well as doing some engineering inside specific tests, as well as for troubleshooting. So that's the same test that we use across all these test cases. Here is an example again, a controller being tested, a brake controller being tested at a full system level, wherein there will be a lot of simulation models of for instance, landing gear, the flexible body models of this, the complete aircraft model, like the rendering that you see here, and of course, some of the controls, some of the system behavior, everything is being modeled, and then they are running on a real-time platform. But the only physical component here is a brake controller, right? So again, for 3D rendering, just for making sure that visualization and the experience becomes much better to understand how does it work, some rendering options, some test cases, scenarios that you want to run, and to have some of the input given by the operator itself. Some of the cockpit and pilot inputs can also be given, and that will help us to do the complete testing of this brake controller much earlier in the development cycle, and understand its performance, its behavior, some of the issues, even before you couple it or you connect it to the aircraft or the system for that matter. So this can be, of course, done for any system, and it not just be a hardware in the loop. It could be human in the loop. It could be an environment in the loop also. So you can even create a simulation model of the environment itself. So when it comes to I would say a comprehensive test facility that covers multiple, I would say, attributes, ICAT is one of the example. Of course, it comes from automotive and ground vehicles under the NATREP initiative of Ministry of Heavy Industries. And Siemens has been a very close collaborator there for noise, vibration, and durability testing. And then the facility that they have in Manesar is something that they use our hardware and software for standardization, for certification, for engineering, troubleshooting, and so on and so forth. They also support with vehicle development programs using simulation models as well. And likewise, this under same NATRIP, there is a facility in NATRAX and GRC, NATRAX in Indore and GRC in Chennai, again for some of the compliance certification test as per AIS. AIS is something that also being used using our SimCenter hardware. So with that, I just wanted to conclude with one final statement on testing. Of course, it's important to consider testing, but not testing alone. It's important that you also take care of these the collaboration with simulation to speed up the entire development process and minimize cost and efficiency. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you so much for listening. And if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Sai and Mr. Kumarasamy, for giving the perspective from Siemens' point of view and also highlighting several interesting new concepts in terms of, minimizing physical testing and replicating it with combination of simulation. And this is something that the armed forces has been seized of. There have been a lot of policy changes which is permitting simulation-based testing as against actual physical testing that have come up in the recent times. There are certain inescapable requirements of the armed forces. There are some places where type testing is sufficient. There are some places where actual physical testing is required. But I'm sure over a period of time, we will evolve a scenario, an ecosystem where it will be a very, fruitful combination of physical testing and simulation that can be, put together so that, we minimize the amount of physical testing that is required. And also another important part is, which I personally felt during my time in the service, was to try and find ways and means to decouple or de-link the testing from the actual program or the platform development. Because what happens is, more often than not, a system or a subsystem, when you try and approach it in a systemic manner, the platform integration or the platform development is held up because a particular system or subsystem is awaiting testing. So
Yes.
if with the industry and academic participation, if we are able to identify ways and means to decouple and de-link the system testing from the platform development, I'm sure it will go a long way in reducing the life cycle time that is taken for development of a product, or particularly in a complex thing like warship, where there is no prototype testing possible, where everything is to be combined together in one form.
Absolutely.
At that point of time, this kind of innovative solutions will be very helpful, where we are able to decouple the testing of the system from the platform itself. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
I think we've come to the end of the session, because I'm given to understand that Mr. C.P. Agarwal, unfortunately, is not able to join us because he's busy. So, Dr. Jamal, I think I will hand over to you for, for summarizing what happened in the session, and we can take this further subsequently.
Thank you, Commander Saab. Such a detailed and a very insightful and a very brainstorming discussion we had. We had inputs from all the stakeholders right away, starting from our moderator, who spoke about how the clusters generate competition, which is very healthy. And he also said that standardizing the standards is very important, because there are different standards which are there. Even the ministry acknowledges that. Then Commander Nehra, Kuldeep Singh Nehra, who is actually also in charge of the DTI scheme, he also spoke about the key domains which they are working on and how they are trying to. Even PhD Chamber in separate capacity has already met the DGQA and also spoken to Commander Nehra about easing the norms also, which he has clarified now also on the Section 8 company and the SPV and minimum number of stakeholders which can form an SPV. That is all there. I think more needs to be done, and he has asked for important suggestions also on how to make it more comprehensive and industry friendly. That we will do, Commander Nehra. Thank you so much. He has actually just logged out because he has a meeting which he had already told us earlier. Then Professor Kamath actually told about the increasing role of the integration, which is needed for the academy and the industry. How do they take it ahead, and the role of increasing of R&D. The common CFCs have to have more and more R&D so that we take the scheme further and it becomes more and more useful for the industry. And that is what was seconded by Mr. Akhilesh also. He also spoke about the growing need of integration of the industry and the academia. And the tie-ups are possible under different schemes, which obviously the government is trying to do. Mr. Kumaraswamy laid stress on how it is important to consider. Obviously, it is important to consider the testing, but alone considering testing alone is not good enough. We have to consider simulation also along with testing, which is very important for developing a robust testing infrastructure. And I think you are right. This needs to be done, and we can see that Siemens is doing a lot of good work. So this needs to be obviously informed to the government, and also we'll submit a letter, a set of recommendations also on that. We'll be doing a physical program, which in the beginning I already told you. And then obviously Mr. Harsh Gune rightly pointed out that the association should come forward to take the DTIC scheme and other schemes. Let me tell Mr. Gune that we have already approached DGQA, that obviously PhD Chamber along with the industry members would be keen to work on this DTI scheme to take up some of the testing infrastructure also. So that is what is being done also. Thank you so much, all the panelists, for a wonderful discussion. And this is not the end, this is just the beginning. Let me tell you, we'll be doing a physical conference also with all the stakeholders on a larger platform, which will be organized. We'll be informing you, all of you, and we'll certainly invite you to be a part of those discussions. And I will also thank you, the Technology Development Board, for supporting all these webinars. This was the final one. Thank you, Technology Development Board, Department of Science and Technology, for making it possible for all the webinars to successfully be organized with some important speakers. We also thank the Ministry of MSME for supporting all these webinars. Thank you, all the speakers, once again, and we look forward to connect again shortly, maybe in a month's time. Thank you so much. Thank you, Commander Jayakumar,
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumaraswamy. Thank you, Professor Kamath. Thank you, Mr. Gune. Thank you, Archana ji and Rima ji. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you.